Welcome to Teaching Truth. Made in Manhattan is a movie which tells the story of Marissa Ventura, a lowly hotel maid who works in an upper-class hotel in Manhattan in New York. In the movie, she one fateful day meets hotel guest and senatorial candidate Christopher Marshall. And he mistakes her because of the coat that she is wearing at the time, a coat that she has tried on from a hotel guest. He mistakes her for a wealthy socialite. And after an enchanting evening together, the two fall madly in love. But eventually, her true identity is revealed. And what has happened is discovered by the hotel management, and Marissa Ventura is relinquished of her post. And towards the end of the movie, Lionel the wise concierge, who is played by Bob Hoskins, when saying farewell to the maid that was Marissa Ventura, played by Jennifer Lopez, says these words: "What we do, Miss Ventura, does not define who we are. What defines us is how well we rise after falling. What we do, Miss Ventura, does not define who we are. What defines us is how well we rise after falling." Words that could well have been attributed to Peter, the disciple of Jesus who stepped out the boat, but also the disciple who 3 times denied Jesus. What you did, Peter, does not define who you are. What defines you, Peter, is how well you rose after sinking when you stepped out of the boat. Seeing the wind involves faltering, given our humanity. Peter, at the end of the day, for all that he was a disciple and a follower of Jesus, he was human like you and I. And given his humanity, he faltered. When he saw the wind, he began to panic and he began to sink and he cried out. He faltered because he was human. And we are the same. When we see the wind, see the winds of life that come upon us and buffet us, it's okay for us to falter. It's okay not to be okay, because we are human at the end of the day. Seeing the wind involves faltering, given our humanity. You see, the stories of Peter's failures are often front and centre. Whether it be when he lost faith walking on water, or whether it be when he denied knowing Jesus 3 times, or whether it be when he fell asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane, or whether it be when he tried to stop children coming to be welcomed by Jesus. You see, Peter really was one big failure in everything that he did. Peter put his foot in it. Peter messed up big time. Peter made a dog's breakfast, if you like, of things. And yet, isn't it all the more amazing that despite all of that, despite his humanity, despite his faltering, Jesus trusted him. Jesus trusted him. You see, when Peter thought it was all over, with God, it was just beginning. Because Peter, the fisherman, the very person who denied Jesus 3 times, the very person who was a coward, was the very first person to whom Jesus appeared. I love that phrase that Jesus uttered. Go and tell my disciples and Peter. Oh, that's a lovely verse. Go and tell my disciples and Peter. And Peter became one of the founding fathers of the early church. He served as the bishop of Antioch and the first bishop of Rome. And he has been described by Jesus as the rock on which the church would be built. You see, Peter's failures did not define him. And our failures will not, with Jesus, define us. You see, we will falter. We will fail given our humanity. But you see, failure with Jesus is never final. You know, the most humble and effective leaders I know are those who've failed, who've messed up big time, but have put their hope and their trust in Jesus. When Peter stepped out the boat, he faltered simply because he was human. And it's okay for us to falter when we step out and when we follow Jesus. Don't let's ever think we've got it all together or we can put on a mask or a pretense. We are who we are. Jesus expects nothing less of us than to falter, because his hand will be there to save us and to rescue us. Jesus restored Peter and used him in a powerful way. Seeing the wind involves faltering given our humanity. Seeing the wind for Peter made him falter because he was human. And yet it was Jesus in that moment who took Peter's hand, and from that day used Peter in a remarkable way to be one of the founding fathers of the early church. So let's never think that when we falter, that is the end of it with Jesus. Actually, when we falter, it's just the beginning, because at that point, Jesus intervenes. He recognizes our faltering. He recognizes our humanity. He recognizes when we see the wind. Seeing the wind involves faltering given our humanity. And Jesus recognizes that.